YouTube, and welcome back to our channel. Gosh, it has been a minute, but I'm back, y'all. And in today's video, I want to share with you a Ministry Monday. So if you're interested, keep watching. So first of all, happy Monday, y'all. It is Monday, and I know how Mondays can be, so please don't feel like it has to be a drag. So in today's Ministry Monday, I really just thought that it would be important to discuss with you my postpartum experience. The Lord has been really talking to me, and in various ways over the last few months. And I think that I've spent enough time behind the camera to where now I can, dealing with this, to where I can now come in front of the camera and talk about it with you all. And so, of course, y'all know, hubby and I have welcomed a baby girl into our family about 3.5 months ago. And wow, it has been an adjustment. It's been a roller coaster. And so basically, like when we first started this journey, when we first got her home, it was a lot to get adjusted to. It just was. It was a lot of adjustments that needed to be made. The adjustment to new schedule, to a new schedule, a new type of schedule for my husband and I, an adjustment to just being brand new parents, an adjustment to her, taking care of her and kind of experiencing all that it would take to, make sure that she's good. So it's just been a lot to get adjusted to, and we have been grateful for it. So in that though, and then let me say this too, with the pandemic stuff going on, and with the pandemic, with COVID-19 kind of just like mixed into all of that, wow, it's been a lot. Let me just say, be honest. It's been a lot. And so the first thing, it's been a lot because she has demanded a lot of us, of course, but along the way, I started kind of feeling a little bit overwhelmed, with feelings and with emotions. And I didn't really understand what was going on at first, what was happening. I just knew that everything was happening so fast and everything was so, new that it just, it just kind of took me a minute to kind of truly get adjusted to everything and to really, really understand what was happening. So all I knew was that there were days where, after the initial relief of having her here and getting her here safely, after that initial relief wore off, because I think that was probably the first emotion, was relief. But once that wore off, I started kind of feeling some other things. Days would come and I would just be really excited because here I have my beautiful baby girl and I'm able to take care of her, able to have her here. But then some days, and not even just some days, I would experience really both in some of the same days. But I would also at some moments feel sad, and I would feel sad because I still miss my son. And I still hurt every day, and I still think about him every single day. And I still miss him. And so it was really hard. It became really conflicting. And I started feeling guilty about the about those conflicting feelings. Because I think, people would expect that after something like my husband and I have experienced, that we would feel nothing but joy and excitement, right? Having baby girl here, getting her here safely, no problems, no complications. People have, kind of expected us to, and expected me to just kind of feel joy and excitement, and that's it. But the reality was, it started, showing more and more as time went on. The reality was that wasn't the case. It just wasn't. I didn't feel, all the excitement and joy, and that was it. The reality was that I was also feeling sad. My heart hurt as well. My heart rejoiced, but my heart also was sad, and it hurt. And I started the guilt set in of that. And so I didn't really initially know what to do with that, because I didn't even really initially understand what was going on, what was happening. I just knew it was happening. And so as I sat with that, I really realized that I was grieving again. And when I really understood, okay, this is grief. And so the funny and interesting thing is that initially, my grief, when I entered into the grieving process, it was dealing with the death of my son, and that was it. And so along with that, dealing with that process, I had to deal with all the emotions that came with that, all of the feelings that came with that, and that was all it was. And so then I did all this grief work that got me to a point of acceptance. And it got me to a point where I could function again, and got me to a point where I could really accept and live with that new reality. And so then comes my daughter. and I'm going somewhere, I'm walking you through. And then comes my daughter. And then all of this flood of different emotions came settling in, and so I had to realize, one, and understand that I was walking back through grief again, and then I realized that it had reemerged, but this time it kind of took on a different form. So it wasn't just about grieving a loss, it was now about having to grieve the duality of these feelings, joy and pain, that I'll have to hold together for the rest of my life. And so that was a really interesting reality for me, because, walking through walking through a death, but then walking through life again, I still have to deal with death and life at the same time. And so that's what I had to come to the point of understanding, and of course this came with a lot of prayer, a lot of meditation, a lot of just kind of really talking with God and trying to, wrestle. It took a lot of wrestling for me to get to the point to understand where I'm at right now. And so that's what this was. That's what this postpartum experience has been about for me, has been really understanding how to hold, one of my children died in a birth, and now I have a child that lived during a birth. How do I hold those two things together? I have joy in my heart for my daughter, and I still have pain for the son that I will never be able to raise. And so that was really what was happening, was just the wrestling back and forth. And so I had to learn, first of all, to put the guilt down, because this is okay, and that's what I just want to say to somebody too that may be watching, that may be trying to, maybe wrestling through the same thing, or maybe wrestling through two other conflicting emotions. Just to tell you and let you know that you're not alone, and it's okay, and that's okay. That's part of life. And so I had to just kind of walk through that, and so it's been really interesting. And so I just want to share with you a few points, just three, that I just jotted down, and that in my talk with God and in my really meditating and kind of spending time with God, figuring this thing out, is what I've come to terms with. So the first thing that I've come to terms with, and this was really powerful for me, because as an ordained minister, I see it all the time where people think, because experiences are very theological, so we always look to God, whether we consciously or subconsciously. And so the first thing would be, the first initial response to things is generally like, no, especially with the culture we live in. The culture we live in doesn't want to really deal with things, and it's okay. We get it. And so the culture we live in encourages the denial of feelings. But I just want to say this is my first point. Faith is not denial. It's not. And let me say that again. Faith is not denial. It's not. That's not what faith is. See, God calls us to be faithful people. He calls us to be faithful. And faithful doesn't just simply mean being faithful to your spouse or being faithful to your job, being faithful to and committed to the things that you have committed yourself to and that you're called to. That's not the only level of faithfulness. Faithfulness too, God expects us to be faithful and true to our feelings and true to who we really are at the moments that we are that person. And so we have to be faithful. Being faithful is about being faithful to the truth of who you are. So if the truth of who you are is that I'm hurting right now, then that's the truth of who you are. If the truth of who you are is that, hey, I'm really happy right now, then that's who you are. If the truth of who you are is that, you know what, this isn't a good time for me, then that's what we are called. We are called to be faithful to that. And so I just want to encourage somebody with that first point, that faith is not denial. And so, even in my own experience, we have to understand, I had to understand that faith is not denial. So that's what helped me to put the guilt down, because I realized, no, it's not denying my feelings. If I'm happy, I am both. I feel joyful because I have a daughter here, but I also feel hurt and I feel sad because my son is not here and I miss him. And so, and those are two things that's the duality I'll have to hold together forever. That's the reality. That's the truth. And my call is to be faithful to that. So faith is not denial. The other thing I want to say, the other point I want to make is that in this process of me, really walking through this thing, God has really spoken to me. God had to remind me of this. Like, literally, the scripture that came to my mind was, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." Okay, let me say that again. That scripture. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. And the reason that scripture gives me so much, and it keeps coming back to my mind, and like it's a reminder of God, is because it's okay. That scripture lets me know that it's okay to mourn, because guess what? Those of us who mourn, if you allow yourself to mourn, then you can allow yourself to accept the comfort that comes with going through that, because God is always going to be with us, always. And he's always going to offer us comfort. And so that's a very promising and powerful scripture for me that has been. And so I just want to remind you of that as well. That blessed are those who mourn. So allow yourself to mourn if you must. And I also realize this too. Like, I have come to realize as I live, the more and more I live, the more I've realized that, death is the ultimate that we're all going to face. But while we're living, every day that we live, as long as we live, we are constantly suffering little deaths. Those little deaths could be, a loss of finances, a loss of a job, a loss of a relationship, friendship, and even with the pandemic, the COVID-19, the loss of freedom, the freedom to do things the way that we used to. Those are all little deaths. And I've realized I've lived, the more I live, the more I realize that we suffer little deaths all the time. And so it's okay to mourn. It really is. It's okay to mourn, because scripture even tells us, God tells us that if we are blessed are the ones who mourn. We are blessed if we allow ourselves to mourn, because we also will allow ourselves to be comforted. And the word says that we shall be comforted. That's a promise. Like, you can rest assured, if you allow yourself to mourn, that you're going to be comforted. The last point that I want to make is that authenticity leads to stability. What do I mean by that? Authenticity. We are, like, for me, I know for me, I'm called. I feel called, and I've always felt called to being authentic and to being transparent, because it's in that I have been able to find stability. You cannot be fake and then hope to grab on to something and it stabilize you. The only way to stabilize is to be authentic. And what does that mean? It just means being true to what it is that you feel at the moment, being true to what it is that is going on, whatever it is. And so I just want to also encourage you all that to be authentic in your emotions, be authentic in what it is you're feeling, be authentic in what it is you're going through, because that is how you find stability. That's how you maintain stability, or that's how you get it and hold on to it. And so I really just hope that something that was said today helps you. And I hope that something that was said, really resonates with you and helps you along your journey. And so I'm going to leave you guys with what I always leave you with. And that is a prayer that you will allow God to meet, or that God will meet you where you are. And that you will allow Him to bring you up to where you need to be. This has been another episode of Ministry Monday. I hope you guys have a beautiful and blessed week. I'll talk to you in the next video. Bye.